So these are the three biggest winners from Cowboys OTAs, including a former starter who is going from roster bubble player to coach's favorite. Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Mauricio Rodriguez here at A to Z Sports Dallas. Cowboys OTAs are in the books, and next week we will move on to mandatory minicamp. But today we'll talk about players whose stocks are up, and we're going to focus on three winners specifically. Leading us off, let's get into quarterback Joe Milton. This is an obvious one, and it's not going to be one that is very specific about what we've seen in the practice field so far, which really is very limited. It's not like this is training camp where you're getting clips about every single play, but this is rather about what you're hearing from coaches, from players, and from everyone who is there at practice. We went into OTAs not really knowing if he was the number 2 behind Dak Prescott or how much of a competition this would be with Will Grier. Trade obviously suggested that Joe Milton would be the favorite for the job, but as opposed to Trey Lance last year, maybe, Joe Milton was clearly getting the number 2 reps, as opposed to Lance when Cooper Rush was ahead of him, even in OTAs, and we went into training camp last year kind of knowing that things weren't going very well for a developmental quarterback like Trey Lance. At the end of the day, Joe Milton is in a very similar moment in his career, and it is very encouraging to see that he is the number 2. And according to ESPN's Todd Arker, he is clearly that guy behind Dak Prescott. So it's his job to lose. At number 2, I've got one of the biggest names of the offseason, wide receiver George Pickens. Now, we know about the athleticism. We know about the wild catches. None of that is why he is on the list. The reason he is on it, though, is, again, what we've heard about him. We've heard about him being engaged in the meeting room, in the locker room. We've heard about him developing an interesting relationship with CeeDee Lamb, including the fact that, hey, when CeeDee dropped a pass in practice, he dropped down to do some push-ups, which is a very common practice around the NFL and around the world of football, really. But what stood out is that Pickens went down to the floor and did the push-ups with them, kind of showing that bond between veteran and younger player, to put it one way, because he's not exactly a rookie, right? George Pickens is about to play his 4th year in the NFL. So that George Pickens has to be on the list. And number 3, and this is the most important name on the list, in my opinion, because this is somebody whose needle is moving as far as roster chances. Give me linebacker Damone Clark. Before OTAs, I had Clark projected as a roster cut in August. Now I am not so sure. He went from starting 17 games in 2023. Mike Zimmer benched him in 2024. Clark barely could get on the field, even when the Cowboys were dealing with linebacker injuries. But now he seems to be catching the attention of the staff. Brian Schottenheimer recently discussed him and talked about how he's developing a unique bond with linebackers coach Dave Bergonzi and Matt Eberflus. They like him, and he might be about to earn a big role on defense, which is particularly important because the Marvin Overshown won't be ready for the start of the season. And I'll say one more thing. Clark, the Zimmer scheme maybe didn't fit him very well because it wasn't really a one-gap defense where he could play freely from the linebacker position. But now with Eberflus, the Cowboys are likely going back to one back, which should allow him to have to read, quote-unquote, less stuff and just fly around and be the athletic linebacker that he is. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next week. We're ready for mandatory minicamp, man.